Okay, use number 13 for these 3M 775L Cubitron film back stick-it discs. And that is to use as a shooting sander. So those of you that are familiar with a shooting board, you know that it's a device that kind of holds your work. It's got a fence on the back, and you use a hand plane, and you can plane boards to very precise dimensions. You can also square ends. They work fantastic. Not everybody has a plane. Usually those planes are a low angle plane. Not everybody has one. So this is a device that takes the place of a low angle plane. Basically, it's a chunk of wood that's 2 inches by 2 inches. This is from an old pallet. I cut a little relief in here, if you can see that. I raised the table saw blade and I cut a little slot in here about 1/32 of an inch deep. So it left this 1/2 inch here. So the sandpaper goes on this surface here, and it leaves this little safe edge here that will ride against my shooting board and keep my sandpaper from digging into my my jig. And then I cut a 45-degree on the back, and I put a handle. This allows me to put pressure inward, but also pressure downward. So let me show you how this thing works. So I put my board here, and I just took one disc, cut it in half, and I set it on here now. This little gap in here doesn't affect the performance of it at all. So I put my little piece of wood right there, and I put my sander against there, and I can actually sand it, and I can get a very square edge. This also works really well. Sometimes when you use a plane, you'll have trouble with real thin stock or with kind of wonky grain. This thing will work with anything. Well, let's say that I wanted to shoot these two boards here so they could glue them together. I can put them against the shooter here, and I can go back and forth, and I can get a nice, perfect glue joint that's perfect. So let me show you that again. So I can just take a small piece. So these also work well with bench hooks. So if you have a bench hook, you don't have a shooting board, you can actually use your bench hooks, and you can hook those to your bench. And you've got to get this right. And then you can put your piece up here, and then your shooting sander rides against your bench. Same effect. You get a nice square edge, very smooth. So there you have it. The use of these 3M 775L Cubitron film bag stick-it discs in a shooting sander. We now come to the 14th use of these 3M 775L Cubitron film back stick-it discs. And that is, I call these chamfer sanders. So very often I want to put a chamfer on a board, or I want to clean up a chamfer that I did with a router. Very often when I do a chamfer with a router, there's little ripples in it. So going back over that just lightly can help refine that and make it much more crisp. So I like having a chamfer sander on hand. This is one I made. This is just a piece of wood, cut at 45. This is about 1.5 inches. This is about 1 3/4 inches. This is about 1/2 inch here. And there's a little relief cut in here. That's important because the sander has to tuck in behind here. So what this does is this now allows me to rest this against my piece, this piece here, and then my sandpaper can grind a perfect 45 in my work. Downside to this is that the sandpaper can wear out, but you can peel this up and turn it around or trim it off, and you'll get a lot of use out of this little piece of paper here. So that led to this next iteration. This is a very similar design, but it's just got a 45 here. There's a little flat here, flat enough so I can put a screw here and a bolt on the other side. And now this piece here can be moved side to side, and I can expose fresh paper. So I can sand it here. I can sand it here, and then when it gets dull, I can move this over and get to new fresh paper, and this can last a long time. It doesn't really fit the hand well. It doesn't have great ergonomics, but it works. It works fantastic. This is another iteration, same thing as this one, except it has 2 fences on here, or 2 of these guides, and then there's this little piece on the top, and I can actually open and close this, and I can set the size of my chamfer, so as I'm sanding, as soon as I hit the desired depth, it'll just quit removing material. And this also has a piece in here that I can move side to side and expose new paper. Once again, ergonomics aren't great, but it really works really nicely. Lastly, this is a piece of wood. It's 8/4, 1 3/4. It's probably about 2.5 inches long. I just cut a V-groove in here, a V-groove in both sides, and then I just cut a disc in half and I stuck it down in here and I bent it around. And this is 80 grit, this is 180. So what this can do that the other ones can't do is I can actually do both corners at one time. So I'm going here and I can hit it and get both corners at one time. And it leaves a nice, crisp 45-degree edge. So there you have it. One more use for the 3M 775 Cubitron film stick-it discs, miter sanders.